Welcome into another edition of the RollJays podcast brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing Pyramid Contractors. Steve Merfeld, Creighton assistant coach, joins us here on the podcast. Murph, I know it's summer, but we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us.
Yeah, always. You guys do such a great job, and anytime that we can help you guys out, we're certainly willing. Now, I'm glad it's just you and not Casey. I'm not sure we do it if Casey were involved.
So Casey usually gives you your flowers pretty often on this podcast about making the schedule, and that's something you guys have obviously been very busy with recently with the addition of everything going on in the Players Era Festival, with Gonzaga being added to the schedule. What do you kind of, when we see these schedules come out, what exactly do we look for if we're looking for Steve Merfeld's fingerprints on the scheduling?
Well, it's a balance of a lot of different people. Obviously, we want to have a good home non-conference schedule for our season ticket holders. And some years it works out better than others. And certainly, administration's involved when you're doing that. And then, working with Coach McDermott as well on the types of opponents that he wants to play. Certainly the Players Era with those 3 games, and actually in 26, it's going to go to 4 games possibly in the Players Era with as many as 32 teams. So it's a different challenge each and every year, based on the team that you have coming back, what you can project, how many difficult games do you want, how many new players do you have so that you can get them experience in the guarantee games. So every year is a little different. I don't know if there's one definite blueprint that you could say works for everybody.
The MAC portion of it's really interesting, and that's something that Casey kept bringing up a couple of weeks ago, that you and Mac have been working together so long, which teams to ask about, which teams not to ask about. If we're talking about Greg McDermott's ideal schedule, what does that kind of look like for the 2025 season, even though we already know most of the teams are already on it?
Yeah, I think, as I said, it's different every year. We have, 5 or 6 returning guys from last year's team. So with a whole new group, he wanted to be sure that we had, I don't ever want to say easy games, but that we have bye games or guarantee games where we can get guys experience, playing in our system, playing in front of 17,000 people, so that when the time comes, when we get to the Big East schedule, when we get to the Players Era Festival, that they're not starstruck and that they're capable of performing in those situations. So with this year's schedule, it was, let's be sure we have enough guarantee games early on that we'll be able to play a lot of different guys and get them experience under the lights.
That experience factor is going to be really interesting this year with yourself, DK, Alan Huss coming back, and Mac on the staff. There's 4 former head coaches on this staff. How much of an advantage does that give you guys when there are new pieces to move around and to figure out that you have that much experience at such a high level on the staff?
Well, I think, it all comes down to what Coach Mac wants. And obviously, he's proven over time to be one of the best coaches in the country. But everybody has different ideas. Obviously bringing Al back after experiencing 2 years as a head coach, and some of the things that, he took from here and did. I'm sure he took some of Coach Altman's things and implemented them into Al Huss's system. So, when Derek, obviously, as a head coach, came in with different ideas and different things, and that's always beneficial so that it doesn't get monotonous and stale with the practice routine. Just new ideas, practice-wise, maybe different concepts, both offensively or defensively, that people can bring new to the table. And Derek did that a couple of years ago, and now Alan certainly is doing that this year.
The 2 names that keep coming up with the guys that we've talked to that are transferring in, whether it be Nick Graves, whether it be Josh Dix, Owen Freeman, whoever, everybody keeps talking about Jax McAndrew and Ty Davis. And I think it's incredible that those 2 guys, as just true sophomores, have had such an impact on peer recruiting. Why have they been so successful at being a contributing part to getting players and people to come to Creighton University?
Well, I think, obviously Jackson's freshman year and being on the all-freshman team gave him credibility in that regard, and is probably a candidate to be a first-team All-Big East player this year. That gives him the credibility. And then with Ty's a natural leader. I mean, he's one that can step into any gym. And, it's similar to Stephen Ashworth, maybe in a little different way because Stephen was a little more experienced. than Tai, but Tai has the intangibles, to bring people and around him, to have people like him. And that's the next thing. They're both just such great Creighton type players, Creighton student athletes that they're obviously have been brought up extremely well. Parents got to give them a lot of credit, but they enjoy the Creighton experience. They enjoy helping others, and that's why I think people have adapted to them in their leadership role.
When we talk about taking the next step forward, and obviously it's going to be different for both those guys. The roles are going to be different. Positions are different. But what has the conversation been like? We'll start with Jackson. What has the conversation been like with Jackson about expectations for year 2 in this system?
I think, Jackson, obviously, his bread and butter is he's a shooter and can shoot it from half court. I mean, he's in the Ethan Wragge range once he steps across half court. But he has to take, and he can. Last year's team didn't need him to expand upon his game. Be able to create for others, be able to take the ball to the basket and finish around the rim. And he's, Jeremy Anderson's done an unbelievable job with all of our guys, but specifically Tai and Jackson, having been in the program for a year, probably benefited more than the new guys thus far. Their bodies have developed, from just 1 year with being with Jeremy, and they'll continue to develop. It's not like they're a finished product yet, but as that continues to evolve, I think their confidence will continue to grow. And both of them, as I mentioned, are just great kids. And when you're a great kid and have natural leadership abilities, people tend to flock around you.
Same question, but about Tai. Obviously, you bring Nick Graves in. Tai was very helpful in trying to be as informative for Nick as he can. Played behind Stephen Ashworth a year ago, to your point. What does development look like for him heading into year 2, and how important is he for the system?
I think, looking back on last year, probably the most important thing for Tai was the DePaul game in the Big East tournament, where Stephen fouled out and Tai had to step in and did a remarkable job. I mean, he just has confidence in himself, confidence in his own ability, confidence in the system. And as we talked about, he's an outgoing person. He's not about himself. He's about the total team. And when you talk about him helping Nick Graves or recruiting Nick Graves, Ty's attitude in that regard is, I'm not going to win this thing by myself. I need other good players around me. And because of that, he's done a great job with helping with the recruiting. And, most of the kids that are here probably had Tai or Jackson as their host when they did visit.
I think they all did from just the conversations we had with them. The one guy that Casey and I keep bringing up, and we've talked to him and gotten his thoughts on this year and last year, is a guy like Isaac Trout. And he's a guy that's played the 5, he's played the 4, he's kind of played in between at the 3 as well. And when we asked him what his thoughts on this upcoming season would be, he said, I'll play wherever this coaching staff needs me to play. Is it fair to say that we can expect Isaac to be a little bit of a 3, 4, 5 guy this season?
Yeah, I would guess that's pretty accurate, especially, if we're not very deep, I guess, so to say, at the 5 position. And, not to anybody's fault. Obviously, when you have somebody like Ryan Kalkbrenner around for 5 years, it's hard to bring in young guys because they know they're not going to be able to beat him out or play. But yeah, certainly, as the whole program continues to grow and change from the Ryan Kalkbrenner, defensive system, we're going to have a lot of work to do and trying to figure out what's going to be best for all of us.
And we're catching up with Creighton assistant coach Steve Merfeld here on the RollJays podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. You guys got some really good news last week. Fedor Cerny deemed eligible by the NCAA and able to play this season. Mac even talked about it earlier in the year about maybe recruiting around Fedor with the possibility of him not being available. How much does that change your guys' vision of what this offense is going to look like this season?
I think it's tremendous news, not only for Creighton, but also for Fedor. I mean, obviously, he had to sit out those first 2 or 3 months of last season, and it took him a while to become acclimated and to feel comfortable. And by the end of the year, he was coming off the bench and playing exceptionally well. And we need him to continue to do that. We can't back up and say, well, for 2 or 3 months, I didn't know if I was going to be eligible, you are eligible and you are counted on right now. You're a very, very important part of this year's team, moving forward. So in his eyes, accepting that, where last year he was a role player and a very, very good role player, obviously by the end of the year. But this year, he's going to have to strap it on from day one and be one of our leaders on the court, off the court. All the things that Ryan and Steven did for this team last year, Fedor is going to need to do this year for us to be successful.
I want to talk about Ryan Caulker for a minute because obviously he gets drafted by the Charlotte Hornets in the second round and just signed a pretty okay contract to make himself sorry, I'm gonna have to edit that out. Try to make himself a little bit of money on his way to his NBA career in Charlotte. What was it like as a staff to be able to see a guy that you helped develop from his freshman year all the way through 5 years of school get drafted to the NBA and end up in a really good situation with a guy like Liam McNeely and all the pieces they put? Jemiah Neal obviously going to follow him to Charlotte as well. What was that experience like for the staff?
Yeah, I think it's really, really rewarding. And to watch Ryan grow, from the minute he stepped on campus as this 7 foot, gangling 220, 210 pound, I don't even want to call him an athlete at that point. I mean, he was, you could see the potential and, everything. Yeah, he got great instruction here and people worked with him, but Ryan put in the hard work and Ryan put in the determination. And with that determination, his confidence just grew to a whole nother level. I mean, you don't become 4-time defensive player of the year in the Big East without having that kind of confidence and that kind of swagger to you. And that was something that he developed over time. That wasn't something that he came with. In fact, it was probably the exact opposite, where he didn't really trust himself and wasn't sure of himself. And, to watch him grow into the player, but also the person and the human being that the confidence that he showed, through that maturation of the 5 years that he was here was extremely rewarding. And I think every coach that you talk to would say the same thing.
When we had him on, he pointed out the biggest hurdle that he had to get over from a mental standpoint was not worrying about the mistakes made in the game. If you're talking to a young athlete that is just so worried about the mistake or hanging their head after a missed basket or a missed rebound or a foul or whatever, what's the one piece of advice you give to somebody about the mental piece of basketball? Because listen, this system is obviously difficult to learn and because of the space and the pace which you guys play at. What's that piece of advice from the mental standpoint that you give the new players?
Yeah, before I even go to that, I think, and I don't know if Ryan talked about it or not, but Casey was very instrumental.
He did. I was purposely leaving that out.
Yeah, no, it's a very important part of it, and Casey is a very relationship-driven guy, and the relationship that he established with Ryan very early in his career helped Ryan tremendously get over that hump. For advice in terms of that is, everybody's going to make mistakes. We all do. Even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or LeBron James or Michael Jordan, we all make mistakes, and it's part of the game. And as you grow and have a better understanding of that, obviously you want to limit that and you don't want them to happen, but they're inevitable. And you have to be able to take that next step and have a complete understanding that you're never going to be perfect. And whether it be a basketball player, a businessman, a father, a husband, whatever the case may be, you're going to have setbacks along the way, and how you handle that, the adversity of that is going to be very important to where you end up.
I want to talk about the relationship portion of things and not to continue to give Casey Matthews his flowers while he's on vacation. But I think it's really interesting, especially in today's day and age. Maybe it's not that different, but when the one thing that Ryan talked about when we were talking to him about this is knowing that there's certain people that want to be around you because of the benefit of possibly being around an athlete long term. When somebody comes into a big time program like Creighton, how much is the discussion being had about watch who you surround yourself with and making sure that you're establishing relationships for the right reason as well?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think Coach Mack and really our whole staff does a really good job of that. And, the message we basically give them is, stay off social media, because they're going to love you when things are going great and they're going to hate you when things are not going well. And somewhere it doesn't matter what people outside of our program think or say. This is us, and this is who we are, and we care about you, and you're going to be successful if you stay within the process and continue to grind day to day. And I think Mac does an incredible job of selling that to our players. And not that they all listen to that and stay off of social media, but it certainly is the right message, in this day and age with what is out there, and the amount of people that can get on there without identifying who they are, maybe for a lack of a better word.
Sure.
And people that are betting thousands of dollars on these teenage kids, and counting on them to make them a fortune. Just isn't fair. And because of that, it just, we have to try to keep them as level-headed as possible and stay off of social media.
I want to get to the hot button topic that's surrounding college basketball right now. It's the expansion of the NCAA tournament. Do you have any thoughts on adding an additional maybe 5 or 8 teams to March Madness? Do you have a take one way or the other?
Personally, I guess, speaking from my own experiences and winning a game as a 15th seed, I don't want it to change. I really don't. I think there's a level of excitement, when the first round comes about, and every year now it's inevitable that there's going to be an upset, whether it be even a 16 seed has done it now. So I'd prefer to keep it right where it's at, but they're not going to listen to me anyway.
Sure.
I'm sure, as everything in this world is driven right now is by the dollar, and that's probably the reason that they're looking to expand.
I want to talk about that for a minute too, because we started the interview off talking about scheduling. When you start doing these schedules and reaching out to teams, does the discussion about TV deals or which channel it's going to be on or anything like that come up in those discussions, or is it a matter of just getting the game on the court and letting that sort itself out later?
Not so much anymore. Maybe 5 or 10 years ago, before all these streaming, channels and different ways that, the broadcasts are so professionally done, and the video is so good, whether it be on ESPN Plus or any of these other streaming options that are out there, that really doesn't factor into it. I mean, once in a while, I'll mention, hey, the game, regardless, we don't know a start time yet, but the game will be most likely on Fox Sports 1 and be a nationally televised game.
Sure.
But not so much anymore, because just about every game now is televised by somebody.
You just mentioned the ESPN Plus deal, and obviously that just came down the pipe yesterday. And with the majority of games being on the Fox networks, and now this edition, does that help recruiting as much as it seemed like it would be, even though everything is kind of on TV now, to have just another platform where Creighton basketball could possibly be seen?
Well, I think just having ESPN, the power behind that is certainly beneficial. In this situation, I think it's probably more beneficial to other sports other than men's basketball, because of the fact that most of our games are either going to be on Big Fox or Fox Sports 1, which is a national brand. So, certainly having ESPN as part of the Big East is something that is very, very powerful.
Well, Murph, as always, we greatly appreciate your time. Thanks for taking time out of your summer to talk to us. We'll catch up with you when basketball season rolls around.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll just cut it off there and I'll edit it out. That was Creighton assistant coach Steve Merfeld, who joins us here on the RollJays podcast. If you haven't liked or subscribed to Big East Energy on YouTube yet, please do so. It helps out the channel a ton. We're almost over 20,000. The march to 20K is on here on Big East Energy Network. If you want to keep up to date on what's going on at Villanova, what's going on at Providence, you can do it with all of the Big East schools at BigEastEnergy.com. Subscribing to YouTube channel today. This has been the RollJays podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing, Pyramid Contractors. We'll see you next time. RollJays.